So where do we go from here? Where it's like we have we now know the difference, right? But like, what's the point of the difference? We know there is a difference.
The
What's the point?
yeah, the problem that I see is that, like you just said, like most people, maybe not, most people don't know like the Greek and all that stuff. Whatever, doesn't matter. Like you said earlier, most people know that there's a difference between the body of Christ or the big C church
Yeah.
and a church building. Most people know that,
Okay.
but we don't necessarily live like that.
Mm,
And I think a lot of the evidence lies in our language and the way that we speak. Because
mm,
how many times do you hear like, oh, this building, this is like the body of Christ. Like, don't. It's like, oh, I remember growing up and hearing things like, oh, like Satan can't come in here. Like, this is
house. This is
God's
God's
house.
house.
This is God's
Yeah.
house. Yeah,
It's very common
it's very
church
common.
language.
Yes, exactly. But we use that language so interchangeably
Mm,
that it gets confused where the building becomes the same as the body of Christ, or
mm,
the building becomes equated to the bride of Christ,
mm.
right? But
Yeah.
they're not the same. They're not the same. Because I think about it like this: if you after after when Jesus ascended, right, and the apostles went on with their ministry, none of them went around trying to build new temples.
Hmm.
None of them went around trying to
Interesting.
build new synagogues or buildings or institutions or organizations or whatever. They definitely had, there was a church structure. Like
Yeah.
they assigned elders, they assigned deacons to help the flow of ministry and
Mm,
distributing goods to the people
yeah.
so that they could work on their teaching. But they weren't trying to build this, they weren't trying to build a temple
Okay.
because they understood
Mm, mhm.
that they were the temple, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I just find that interesting
Yeah.
that nowhere throughout the New Testament, like after Jesus' death and ascension, that they just understood that. They just understood
Mm,
that they
yeah.
no longer had to do this whole like that they were the temple. They were the body of Christ.
Mm. So, okay. So we've talked about in previous episodes about how disempowering the local church can be to believers sometimes.
Yes.
Okay. And it's really tempting. Frankly, it would be an easier message to just say, just stop going to your local church. Just change your programs, like do things differently, or like just basically deconstruct what we have
Yeah.
now as a local church.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we were talking about the other night is like, frankly, we don't really think that's realistic in a sense to, and we don't think that that would really solve the core issue of this either.
Yes.
And so, like, so we go to church, right? And we go, and what do? We basically kind of greet each other, right? We say, like, what's up to all our homies. We greet, we sing. Sometimes some churches will do Sunday schools or classes, um, class. And then we will, let's just basically say we'll have a message.
Yeah. Sermon or
Yeah, sermon,
teaching, whatever.
sermon, teaching, something like that. It's like a main focus, right? And then we
Yeah.
have sometimes maybe like more singing at the end, like another
Yeah.
song right at the end. Altar call, sing,
Right.
altar, altar call, and then dismiss. And then you may have some more what's up to your homies.
Right.
And go have some lunch.
I mean, yeah.
Okay. So we have that. Now, what would be like what was commanded? What did Jesus say to do? Like as once you become a member of the body of Christ, what are you like? what did he teach? Like what are we supposed to do now as believers? Like just some basic tenets, things that we've gone over before.
Yeah, I mean, I think the probably the biggest one and most obvious is go and make disciples,
Okay.
right? That's the mission
Mm,
of a disciple of Christ is to go and make more disciples, right? And
right.
so I think I mean you could go down the line and name all the things, right? Like you want to this whole idea of progressive sanctification that you're trying to become more and more like Christ. That's the goal as a Christian. And so think of like the fruit of the spirit. You want to love people more. You want to have patience, kindness, goodness, self-control, right? Like all these different attributes that you try to acquire,
Okay.
right? And so but I think you could, you can list all these things of like how to be a better person or whatever, and that's how you live, that's how you worship God, right? But truly, it really is just as simple as becoming a disciple of Christ, an apprentice of Christ, and then teaching others to do the same, sharing that experience, sharing that life transformation with others. That's really all it boils down to.
Hmm.
And I think that I mean I like how you listed all this out because I think that sometimes the simplicity of that, being a disciple of Christ and sharing that with others, the simplicity of that gets lost in all these
Mm,
lists of do's,
hmm.
all these things that are just like, it's just what we do. And we think that, we, you, you've, we've heard pastors say, go to church, you got to have worship, you got to have a sermon, you got to have all these things. You just got to.
Mm,
But it's like, why?
hmm. Why? Okay, so then inside of this sort of local church, you have kind of like what I would call like tenets of being a member of one of these local churches. Typically, it's service. Okay, and then you have let's say tithing, giving back, service, tithing. What's another
Maybe like, hmm, I mean, yeah, service kind of covers a lot.
Yeah. Service, tithing, and then you kind of have like worship in there too,
Yeah,
I would say. That's to me like what,
maybe like a life group
yeah,
or like a
yeah.
Bible study.
We'll just say groups.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's like a community aspect, right?
Hmm.
So, um service is really important to the local church, the local building, because without people serving there, uh they would not be able to survive. Tithing is important for the local church because they have bills.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, Worship is important because, well, worship in the church, in the local church, is typically thought of as only singing and like
Hmm.
praising, lifting
Hmm.
your hands. So I'm just gonna like make that a point, right? So we're gonna do like singing slash praising. Okay. And then we sort of have like this tenet of groups, which is like community.
Yeah.
Because like if you don't, they want you to grow the community by bringing people to church, by getting closer to other members so that you feel connected,
Right.
getting plugged in. That's a big term. We have a lot. Um, so in these individual tenets, are any one like, do we consider any one of these like, if we said tithing slash giving, Like, do we consider any one of these like blatantly wrong? Say like, no, they're not like blatantly wrong, right? Like they're okay things, right?
Yes.
Okay. I think this is why this is so freaking difficult to describe
Yes.
because it would be so much easier if we just sat up here and we're like, just stop going. Just
Yeah.
stop going to
Right.
church,
Right.
right? But the truth is it's much more detailed and minute than that. And so that's what we're trying to get down to.
Right.
And so I think what we're kind of dancing, what we've been dancing around here is that we oftentimes get so distracted with all of this stuff that we're supposed to do to keep this church running, this building open, that you have like money, you have like people, you have like uh groups, right? Like multiple people. You have like freaking singing, let's put a microphone there. And then you have like events. There's like a little event tent. So you have all this stuff because the local church needs to bring more bodies inside
Yeah.
because that means more tithe, better talent. It
Yeah.
means more people serving in the church, leading in the church. It means more people in the groups, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like making the building, like the institution, the organization, whatever, better and more attractive, so that
mhm.
more people will come to it.
Yeah,
Right. Like, and
exactly.
then therefore just it keeps growing with the with the intent of all of this to help believers. But I think our point is we're seeing that it doesn't seem to help believers all that much.
It does not. Well, it doesn't seem to help them all that much according to what Jesus said.
Yes.
If you look at it as just like general help, it can be good,
Yeah.
right? But like if we're really looking like what we've been talking about in these last episodes about what Jesus was really saying that
Yeah.
you will become and be as a disciple, I feel like that just is like, well, we hope, let's bring them in the church, get them converted, get them members. And
Yeah.
then like, well, we kind of hope that discipleship will just happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the total wrong focus.
Yes. It's completely backwards from
Completely
what Jesus
backwards.
taught.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we can say, like, we're not just here, like, kind of like what I said last episode, like, we're not just here making all this stuff up. Like, statistically, you can go and look at the statistics and see that the American church is actually failing. We're not.
Literally.
This isn't just like bogus. We're
No.
not just making this crap up. Like,
No.
the church is failing. More churches are closing the doors than opening them today.
1,500 pastors are leaving the ministry every month.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every month, dude. That's
That is a
crazy.
lot.
That's a
That's a
lot.
lot. So obviously there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I think what you're getting at earlier is that we could keep on trying to do different versions of this, right? Switch up the programs, or maybe less worship, or maybe more Bible studies, maybe more service, whatever you want to say, right?
Yeah.
But this is what we talked about a couple episodes ago when we were on the rooftop, saying that you're just, what we believe is that you're just treating the effect, right?
Yeah.
The circumstances of the church currently is that it is failing.
Yeah.
Statistically, it's failing. And so to try and fix all these things that we're doing, all these do's, right? You're treating the effect without understanding the cause.
Mm.
That's the problem.
Mm. So what we're
And
saying is like simply changing the order of service, putting a new class in, changing the way you do sermons, like changing the worship. Like, none of that is really going to make a difference until,
Until
with the caveat of until the individual believer becomes a true disciple.